So, dear friends, today is the feast of the dedication of the Lateran Basilica, as we said earlier. These are reminders that we're part of a universal church. Sometimes we hear the expression used, the Irish church. The Irish church isn't really a good term to use. There's no such thing as the Irish church. There's the church in Ireland. There's the Catholic Church in Ireland, because we're not our own church, kind of separated from we're geographically separated and distinct. But our faith is the same faith that they believe in Albania and Rome and the States and Australia. It's the same Catholic faith, one. So we have to be careful to remember that, otherwise we might go off on our own kind of local tangents, which has been done in the past and is rarely a good idea. So we're part of the one Holy Catholic Church, the one church, one church. So today in our reading from Ezekiel, we have this image which I suppose, like many of the readings, might just go clean over our heads as somewhat irrelevant. The angel brought me to the entrance of the temple, where a stream flowed out from under the temple threshold and flowed eastwards because the temple faced east. The water flowing out south of the altar, and so on and so forth. There's water flowing from the temple. In another passage, it speaks about how that water flowing from the temple increases in depth and width. So at a certain distance, it's up to his ankles, at a certain distance, up to his knees, and at a certain distance, it's a torrent that he can't cross. So Ezekiel, what's he saying to us? It's interesting, because if you will, the grace flowing from the church flows out into the world, but it's supposed to increase as it flows. So how is it going to increase? What causes it to increase? Well, how does any stream increase? If you look at the source of any river, they're usually little streams. You could block it with a foot. You could block the River Shannon with your foot at its source. But down in the Shannon estuary, I mean, you wouldn't block it with an awful lot of concrete. Like it's a huge water body. So what happens? Well, other streams, other water courses come into it, feed into it. So in our case, what is that? So the grace flows from the tabernacle, flows from the altar. Even the way we deliberately designed the tiles on the sanctuary here and going down the aisle, this is the sanctuary, so the Holy of Holies, where the Most High dwells. So the tiles here are kind of a marble-looking tile, and the water flows out down the aisle and then flows out the annex into the rest of the world. That's the idea of the tiling that we put here. So how does it increase when it leaves? If this is the source, surely this should be like where it all comes from. Well, it is where it all comes from, but it's magnified out there through you and I. We're the ones who make the faith known and loved. We are the visible representation of the church, you and I. The Bible on its own will become a lovely book on people's shelves unless they see it lived. Unless they see you and I live this, then it's only another religious text. It's only when it becomes lived, like put into practice, then it becomes interesting or enticing or attractive. When people see how Catholics started schools and universities and orphanages and so many things for the good of others, and not just the good of other Catholics, but to be a blessing to the whole country. People thought, wow, there's something, these people actually care. They actually care. See those Christians, see how they love, was what was said about them in the early centuries of the church. See how they love. So that's what makes the church attractive. It's not just that we have the truth, we do, but that's not what makes the church attractive on its own, if we don't live the faith in a way that makes it look attractive. So it's up to you and I. We are sent out as missionaries. It's up to you and I to make the source of all grace known and loved by our example, by the way we live. I was looking at a YouTube video on Gen Z recently and how they're getting on. Gen Z aren't faring very well at all now. So Gen Z are, they're known as like the generation that have grown up with technology the whole way. So they're kind of born in about 1997-ish, up until about 2012-ish. So they've always had tech. They've always had phones. They've always had the internet. Most of us here can remember, well, most of you that direction, apart from a few exceptions, most of you remember a time without the internet. Do you remember the time? Do you remember when there was no internet? Even I remember when there was no internet. But they've grown up in a world which is tech saturated. And we probably thought initially that this would be a really good thing, because you've access to so much entertainment, access to so much information. You can book your flights at home, you can shop at home, you have access to a million and one things that you can do if you've got a free hour. But what they're noticing is increased levels in anxiety amongst young people today, especially Gen Z. So, increased levels of anxiety. And studies are showing two things. Where does anxiety come from? Well, it's that fear of the unknown, that insecurity about yourself now. So I'm not feeling very confident in myself. And I'm afraid of maybe of my past, and maybe afraid of what might come. So you live in this kind of state of anxiety. And if a Gen Zer is worried, what will they do? When they're kind of feeling anxious, what will they do? They'll take out their phone, right? They'll take out their phone, and they'll watch something to entertain themselves. So they'll find comfort in entertainment. Now, this does not change the anxiety, it just masks it. So then once the phone is put down again, now I begin to feel anxious again. So what do? Take out my phone. And that's why it has become such an addiction in Gen Z to constantly be stimulated with the phone. But like any stimulus, like any addiction, the more you use it, the more you take it, the more, like it's called dopamine, when you get a little dopamine hit, when you see something pleasurable, you get a little dopamine hit. But that begins to wear off. It's not always the first dopamine hits are stronger, but like after 2 or 3 years of doing this multiple times a day, like hundreds of times a day, it becomes less and less effective. It doesn't make you feel good anymore. So now you want even greater entertainment, or even more shocking entertainment. Not just cats on skateboards anymore, but you want to see graphic violence. It's just something, And ultimately, none of this fixes the anxiety. And I was just thinking about it today, like for ourselves of a slightly older vintage. Where did our confidence come from? I think for my parents' generation, they wouldn't have been super confident. The school system and the way children were brought up, it was like, do not speak until spoken to. Kind of stay quiet, wished up until you're asked to do something. So we kind of got used to just staying into the background. We're generally not very forthcoming with our voice or with our opinion in a public sphere. Generally, Irish people are very reserved. So where does our confidence come from? Well, again, what are you confident at? Maybe you're confident at baking an apple tart, right? You like baking an apple tart. Why are you confident at doing that? Because you've done it 100 times and it worked fine. What are you confident at? Cutting grass. Why are you confident at cutting grass? Because I've done it 100 times, and every time I try to do it a little better. I try to make sure the lines are straight. I try to do it as quickly as possible, as efficiently as possible, and have everything looking good. I'm confident at it because I've done it 100 times, and I know I can do it. Whereas I'm not confident at speaking French. Now, you can all tell me that, your French is fantastic. But ultimately, when I speak to a French person, they look at me and they go, no. Like, you can tell me, and that's often what has happened to young people today. They've been told, you're fantastic, you're fantastic, you're fantastic. Then you go out in the real world and realize you're not fantastic. And there are lots of other people who are more fantastic than you. And you're not the best, and you don't know everything. And it absolutely shakes their anxieties. It shakes this security. So what do they do? Take out their phones. Very good. That's exactly what happens. Take out the phones. And that becomes a constant. Whenever there's a problem, take out your phone. What's interesting, though, I know with Gen Z, is that we have access to huge amounts of information. But I'm getting contacted all the time by young people who ask me, how do you fill the oil in a car? What tire pressure should I have in my front tires and my back tires? How often should I bring the car to the garage? It's like, Google it. You have the phone in your hand constantly. Ask it something useful. Yeah, but I'm busy TikToking. Like, use the phone for something good. But they don't. It's just so interesting. And what happens then is it knocks our confidence, because confidence comes from competence. You're confident at something if you know how to do it, rightly I'm not confident speaking French because I don't really know it very well. But confidence comes from competence. And where does competence come from? It comes from work. Work. When you do things and you do them well, then you learn how to do them. And now I know. Now I'm not afraid to wash up because I know how to wash up. I'm not afraid to use the dishwasher because I know how to use it. I'm not afraid to use a Hoover because I know how the Hoover works. I can even empty it. Do you know? And that's where... So confidence comes from competence. When I'm able to do something, then I'm confident doing it because I know I can. Confidence does not come from being told you're amazing. Because being told you're amazing doesn't make you capable of doing the thing. So, yes, obviously we have to affirm people and build them up, but always in the truth. And that's where work comes from. Why is this important today? When it comes to witnessing to the Lord out in the world, a lot of us would say, Jenny, I couldn't do that. Like I'd be too nervous or too shy, or it's just awkward talking about the faith. You know? We kind of hesitate to do those kind of things. But if I recognize what the Lord has done for me, if I'm confident in who he is, and I'm confident because I've seen his competence, I've seen how often the Lord has taken care of me, this gives me confidence. And because of the confidence I have in the Lord, now I can say to people out there, come to Mass. It's great. It actually helps me. Mass is actually a blessing for me. I leave afterwards feeling closer to God, maybe feeling a little challenged as well to do better, but I feel closer to him. So come. Where does my confidence come from? Recognizing the Lord's competence, how good the Lord is, what the Lord has done. So that's what helps me to be a missionary, to be confident in what God has done in my life, to count my blessings, recognize those blessings. And that gives me confidence. And sometimes people will agree with you, sometimes people won't. But nobody will leave indifferent from a conversation like that. A young person especially, who has the confidence to invite someone to a religious ceremony or to stand for the faith in the public sphere. People see that. And whether they say it or not, there's a sort of admiration there, even if people disagree with you, to stand for something as a minority. That takes confidence. So it means you have to overcome that kind of social anxiety that we might have in wanting to be hidden, not wanting to be seen, not wanting to stand out. But our confidence comes from recognizing who the Lord is, what he has done, the blessings that I have received from him. And because of that, I can stand up for him in the public sphere. In doing so then, we become the fulfillment of this prophecy of Ezekiel, where the water flowing from the temple becomes larger and deeper. It's medicinal. Life teems within it. It becomes a blessing to all of society. But through us, God has done his part, and now he's sending us out. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations. So we ask the Lord today to help us to grow in confidence in standing for his name in the public sphere, that we might confidently invite people to come to meet him, that all might know who the Lord is, and that every knee should bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. Amen.